Okay, welcome in to our final lesson for this year. Thanks for sticking with me so far if you've been here before, and if you haven't, welcome. This lesson should be okay to watch as long as you, even if you've missed all the grammar stuff, as long as you know hiragana and katakana at least a little bit, you're familiar with what they do, I think you're in a good place to learn about kanji. Uh, I'm going to talk about kanji in a kind of general way because I can't talk about every single kanji and how they work and what they are. Japanese students learn that over their entire schooling career, so that by the time they finish high school, 12 years of education, they have acquired all of these kanji slowly. We're trying to go faster than that if we can, but I'm still not going to be able to cover all, whatever, 2,500 Joyo kanji, which is the list to be considered literate, and then even more if you were to go beyond that. Even though they're not standard kanji, you see a lot of them as well. Okay. So to start with, let's talk about the basics of kanji, right? So there are two ways that you can read a kanji typically. There's what's called the kunyomi, which is the Japanese reading, and that's written in hiragana. And then there is the onyomi, and that's the Chinese reading, and that's written in katakana. Okay? So the reason for this is that kanji originally comes from Hanzi, which is a Chinese writing system. And when the Chinese brought writing to Japan, the Japanese language did not have a writing system, so they just took the writing system of the Chinese and added in what they had. So you have the kun yomi. Yomi means reading, right? It's the noun form of yomu, which is to read. So the kun yomi refers to this is how the word was said in Japanese. And the on yomi, on means sound, and yomi means reading. The onyomi is the sound that the Chinese used for that word. So when you put a bunch of kanji together, it becomes less efficient to combine a bunch of those words. And having a writing system that lets you combine words together, they used the words that the Chinese already had for them, kind of. Okay? So here is an example kanji, right? This kanji is yama. Okay, so it's kun yomi is yama. This means mountain. And then it's on yomi, so it's two sound-based readings rather than its meaning-based readings are san and sen. Okay, so this is a kanji that means mountain, and so in kunyomi it uses the word for mountain. So that's yama. But when you use it in other words, sometimes it will change to san or sen, which is typically the Chinese reading, right? So it uses katakana for the onyomi because it's trying to tell you this is the phonetic sound. It's not about the meaning of the word, it's the phonetic sound that this makes. And because the reading comes from Chinese, which is a foreign language. So that's one of the major uses of katakana as well. But you use hiragana for the kunyomi because that relates to the meaning of the word. And so it is the existing word that you would already know, and you're just learning how to write it with kanji. So as a rule of thumb, if you see a kanji on its own, then you would say it using its kunyomi. Okay, so if you see this kanji on its own, you most of the time will read it as yama, right? Or in general, any kanji, if you see it on its own, you typically read it with its kunyomi. But if you see a bunch of kanji strung together with nothing in between, then it's probably going to use one of the onyomi. So here is an example sentence where the same kanji is used twice and it uses both readings. Okay? Yuki de chojo ga owatere iru. What's this? Owareteru iru yama ga Fujisan desu. Okay. So Yuki is snow. Yuki this chojo is the top of the summit of a mountain, and this is owarete iru. So this is rareru, which is to get, and then te iru, which is ing, and so this is to basically be covered with snow. Okay. So that all modifies yama, which means mountain. So the mountain whose top is covered with snow is Fujisan desu. Fujisan is how they say Mount Fuji. All right. So that's what the sentence means, but that's not so important. What really matters is here we have this kanji on its own. It's between two hiragana. Do you see this? And it's read as yama. But here we're seeing it as part of a series of kanji. So now instead of yama, we're seeing Fuji-san. And we know that san is one of the readings of this kanji in onyomi. This is how you will typically see kanji used. If you see it on its own, then most of the time, kunyomi. And if you see it as part of a string of kanji, then one of the onyomi is most likely. This is a rule of thumb. It's not guaranteed to work this way, but this is most of the time how it's going to be. There's another rule of thumb, which is that if you see okurigana after kanji, then you should probably use the kunyomi. I'll show you what that means. So this is one of the verbs that we've been using in a lot of our lessons. This is taberu, right? So this hiragana that shows up after the kanji in the verb is called okurigana. And if you look, right, taberu, tabemasu, tabemashita, tabemasen, tabeta, tabenakatta, they all have, modifications of the same base, okurigana. So the reading of this kanji stays the same. And so in this, this one, this kanji, we're always reading it as ta in this word. Okay. Here is another couple of ways. So this is kanji when they attach two words together. Some changes can happen that modify the sounds. We saw this when we were doing counter words. We saw how it can be, ichi can become ippo, and, hachi can become happo, and roku can become roppo, and so on, right? So when you have two kanji, right, and then the second kanji can sometimes have dakten or handakten added to the first hiragana character. Sometimes tsu can change to sukuon, so the little tsu, which doubles the consonant. And sometimes if you have two consonant sounds, like, you have a ka sound and then another ka sound, even if it's like ka, ke, so sometimes that can just double and become ke, like this. So I have an example of each of these. This kanji, it means big, and, read as o. And this kanji means sky, and is read as sora. So when you combine them together, o and sora, you get ozora. You get these dakten added. Okay? This is a change that happens frequently. And so when you see words like these, it might not be your instinct to add dakten or handakten, but when you learn words, right, which is what you should be doing to learn kanji, you're going to learn them from words. If you see that dakten or handakten have been added, that's fine. That's just a way of getting the word out easier. So rather than saying o sora, it glides faster if you go o zora. And that's why they get added. Here's another one. This is using the onyomi this time. We have a kanji here, which is tetsu, and we have another one, which is te. So rather than saying tetsu te, the tsu becomes a tsukuon, and you get tette. Okay, so this word is read as tette. And then here's the one about repeated consonants. So you have one kanji which is read as kaku, and you have another kanji which is ko. And so kaku ko rather than kaku ko, because of devoicing, it would become kakko, and that just glides into kakko, right? So this ku drops the u, and this ko, and it just becomes kakko. All right, like that. So these are modifications that can happen when you attach two kanji together to form a bigger word. There are no explicit rules about when one will change to the other in terms of a kanji sense. You can learn them from a linguistic sense, why some sounds change to other sounds, but the patterns aren't clear from the kanji. Those come from knowing the language's linguistics, underlying mechanics, which we're not going to talk about. And even then, it's not always the same. So rather than teach something like that to you, I'm just giving you an idea of what you can expect and why some words are not just reading plus reading, but they change a bit. Okay. There is this mark, which is not a kanji itself, but it shows that you repeat a kanji. Okay. So instead of writing iro, right? So iro means color. Iro means tons of colors because you've said iro multiple times. But really, iro means a lot because different types of. So instead of writing it like this, you can use this kanji as shorthand. This mark as shorthand to say the previous kanji is repeated. And this is used a lot because kanji can be quite complex. This mark is a lot simpler to draw because it's just 1, 2, 3 like this. And so you will see this used frequently in words that have, repeated kanji where the kanji is complicated. Actually, even when they're simple, the word hitobito is written like this, even though, you could write it like that. That's not how it's written. Okay. So I have some example kanji here just to get you used to seeing how this works, but I'm not going to go through all of these kanji. Okay. So this is 1, the kanji 1. In its kunyomi, it can be either read as hito or hitotsu, right? So this tsu can change. That's what the dot here means. And it means that this tsu can be modified to something else. It can be replaced with something. If you look at a verb, for example, like taberu, this is what the dot would come before the ru because the ru is the part that changes when you form other words. And then this has onyomi, which is ichi and itsu. So when we were talking about the first day of the month, right? The first day was itsuka. It's not ichi, even though that is reading, but it also has the reading itsu, and that's where itsuka comes from. Hitotsu comes from a kunyomi reading for counters. All of these readings exist for this kanji. And the way you write it is just one line. Pretty simple. Here's another one, right? This is 2. 1, 2. And it has a few different readings. You have futa, futatsu, futatabi for kunyomi, and you have ni and ji for onyomi. And which one is used when is going to depend on the word, right? So, like I said, that's going to depend. but that's how this one works. And so on. San, right? 3 is 1, 2, sorry, it's 1, 2, 3, like this. Long one for 1, and then short and long for 3, which is mi, mitsu, or even mi with this. So this tsu can get dropped when you're talking about counter for days, and becomes ka, right? For the counter for days was ka, and so you get mikka, and that's how the third day of the month is mikka with this little tsu. But this can also be read as san or zo as well. And so on. We can go through a bunch of these and those readings, but I don't want to focus too much on these and what they mean. Initially, this was a lesson to show you a bunch of kanji, but I think we're better served, looking at some other stuff. So I'm going to flash these on the screen so you can at any point freeze the video and look at this stuff if you want. But I'm now going to transition us to a different thing. If you have any questions about this, by the way, go ahead and ask. Okay, so while you get your questions in, let's start talking about kanji radicals, okay? So first, let me tell you what a radical is, and then I'll tell you why you want to learn these. So a kanji, right? If it's a simple kanji, like, ichi, that's fine. That's easy. It doesn't really have a radical that you need to learn because it's easy to remember the kanji. But let's look at, a complicated word. Like, let's look at nihongo, right? So ni, hon, and then I think it's like this. There might be a third line. Yeah. Nihongo looks like this. This is a big, complicated kanji. It has multiple parts, right? You're seeing like there's this, and then there's this, and all of this is one character. So that gets tough. How do you, but it turns out that there is some logic to this, okay? If you look at this part of the kanji, well, we've seen that, right? There's the verb iu, which is to talk. Within this, we have this box, and this is kuchi, which is mouth. So you can see how these are all, kind of logically constructed. So mouth feeds into this kanji, which is about talking. And then you have this one, and within this, you have this, which is 5. And if you remember, 5 is go, which is how the sound go comes into nihongo, right? And then again, you have another mouth symbol. So this ends up meaning language. This entire kanji, right? This kanji, it means language. And you simultaneously get clues about what it means logographically by its constituent parts, but also how to pronounce it from its constituent parts. And each of these little pieces that I'm pointing out, like the mouth or the number 5 and so on, these parts, we can call them radicals. Specifically, one kanji will have one radical, and I'll get into that, but it's important to know that you have all these constituent parts, and they make up a kanji. So there's some logic to it. If it's a simpler kanji like this one, then this is the kanji and the radical at the same time. But if it's a complicated one, like this one, then it's going to have constituent parts that you can break it up into, and the constituent parts, you can use those to understand the kanji. Okay? So why do you want to learn kanji? There's a couple of reasons. The first is that rather than memorizing a full kanji, as a list of strokes, like let's say, the kanji for go, rather than remembering that as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and thinking of this as a 14-stroke character, which is complicated. Instead, you learn it as parts. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. It turns out that humans generally are not great at remembering things that are larger than a sequence of 7. So when you want to recall this kanji, if you can remember these patterns as radicals, then it's easier to draw the full kanji out than to remember it as individual strokes. So it's easy to learn radicals, and then the radicals stay consistent across multiple other words. So knowing how to draw one radical helps you for multiple kanji. The second clue, and one of the ones that I think is the most useful, right, is that when you want to search for kanji on an online dictionary like Jisho, you can search by radical. And so you don't have to be able to copy and paste this kanji. Let's say you see a picture like of a poster, and you're thinking, how do I read that kanji? I don't know what that kanji means. You can look it up by searching for the parts that you do recognize in the kanji, and Jisho will give you a list of kanji that contain those parts, and you can use that to find the kanji you're looking for. So it's a lot faster than scrolling through an entire list of kanji, somehow trying to find it, or trying to draw it with some kind of like an automatic recognition machine, because those take stroke order into account, and if you do it wrong, it won't find it. And then the last one is some radicals give you clues to the meaning of the kanji, like we saw here, or the reading of the kanji, like we saw here. Okay, so it's useful to learn radicals, I feel. You can learn some of the radicals to start. You don't have to learn every single one, but the most common ones. And then when you start learning kanji, you'll recognize these parts in the full kanji, and maybe you'll make some connections that make it easier to remember. Okay, so let's talk about radicals. In Japanese, kanji are classified by what is called their bushu, okay, which in English we're calling radicals. And there are 214 of them, but not all of them are common. Only 49 of the 214 will make up 75% of the Joyo kanji. Okay, and the Joyo kanji is the government-determined list of around 25 to 2800 kanji that is required to be considered literate in Japan. So if you don't know a kanji that is outside of the Joyo kanji, that is fine. Even Japanese people are unlikely to know them. But you are expected to know the Joyo kanji because they come up all the time. And even within the Joyo kanji, there are some which are very frequent and you'll just know them frequently, and there are others that are less frequent, and so even Japanese people have forgotten them, and that's fine. So we're going to just learn these 49 radicals that make up 75% of this list, so that when we learn kanji, we're going to get this, kind of shortcut, this boost. We know radicals, so when we learn the kanji, we'll have this shortcut. And because this is applying to like 75% of the most common and essential kanji, and that's a list of like 3,000, so we're saying 75% of that, that's huge. Okay, so technically speaking, from a Japanese language perspective, as the Japanese people look at kanji, each kanji has one bushu, right? It has one radical. That's fine. We're not going to care about that. We're going to call all of the parts radicals, okay? Some radicals just are kanji, right? Like we saw this. It is both a kanji and it's a radical. There are some radicals which are not kanji. They are just radicals. And then there are some radicals which get altered and they look different when you put them into bigger kanji. The radicals don't have like predetermined determine names, but even if they did, we don't care about the names. We care about the shape of the kanji, or, well, of the radicals. I'll talk about radical positions really quickly. You don't need to know these names, okay? You just need to know where in a kanji you can see a radical. So I'm going to draw kind of a box, right? And you imagine that you write your kanji in this box. So you could have something here on the left, that's hen. You could have something on the right, that's tsukuri. You could have something on the top, that's kanmuri. You could have something on the bottom, that's ashi. You could have something that encloses the kanji, right? Puts it in a box, that's kamae. And then you can have what's called hanging, and that's tare. So that's kind of like, you have your kanji and then it's just sort of off to the side. And then you have something that kind of wraps around the bottom like this, and that's called nyo, and that's wrapping around the bottom. So those are the places you want to look for a radical. All right. So let's go. We're going to go in order of frequency in terms of how frequently a radical is used in the Joyo kanji. And I'll have a few example kanji. You don't have to learn those kanji today. I just want to go over these radicals. I'm not even going to talk about readings of these kanji or readings that these radicals could give you. I just want you to be familiar with their meaning and their shape. So this one is kuchi. Okay, kuchi means mouth. This is how you would write it, just like katakana ro. And it usually then shows up in kanji relating to the mouth. So your name, right? How does someone call you? So that relates to the mouth. Shouting, that relates to the mouth. Chewing, that relates to the mouth. And you notice this kanji, it can either appear as it is on its own, like this, or it can get sort of like, made a little smaller, thinner, and appear on the left side, like in this kanji or this one. So this is kuchi, the mouth one, right? And I'm only saying kuchi because when you see it on its own, its kunyomi is kuchi. So this is a kanji that means mouth. And so when you see it in other kanji, it typically has something to do with the mouth. Even in Nihongo, the go, which means language, had this kanji. Well, it had this radical, I mean. And then really quickly, I want to draw a distinction between kuchi and this other one, which is the enclosing radical. And that appears in kanji like this one, kuni, which means country, or this one here. So this is an enclosing one where like your kanji is inside, and this is different. This is where it is part of the kanji, like, something like this. When you search on Jisho, right, Jisho will order them by the number of strokes in the radical. And so this is kuchi, and this is the enclosure one. Okay. And so when I took a screenshot of Jisho to show you where you can find these two, this is mouth and this is the enclosure one. And in case you're not sure, just click one and you'll see the suggested kanji and you'll be able to say, oh, okay, I picked the wrong one. Okay. So mouth, one of the most common radicals. Next is water. So mizu is kind of written like this. Okay. This is water. It has a simplified form in kanji where it's just 1, 2, 3, kind of like this. Or it can sometimes, also look like this, kind of like a snowflake as opposed to this curved form. So here are examples of that. This is the radical water, and it shows up in this kanji, which means to swim, which contains another water. So you have two waters here. This is crying, and again, you see water. And this is to come off, and so it contains this one here. And this is this form, which is kind of like this, but just a little straighter. Next is ki, which means tree. So you can imagine tree is going to show up a lot because there are things you derive from woods, there are plant-based materials and different types of plants themselves. So ki looks like that. So it shows up in hon, which is book. Makes sense. Books are made from paper. Paper is made from trees. Table makes sense again, made from wood. Peach, it's a type of tree. So there it is again. All right. Hito means person. So hito normally is 1, 2, like this. But it has a simplified version, this one, which kind of looks like katakana I, which is like that. And this is extremely common. This is going to show up a lot of the times. And then it can also appear as kind of like a hat, like this. Okay, so here in official, as in someone that is part of an officiating body, you have the person kanji. In body, you have the human present there. And when you're comparing, again, you have this shape, and that's human, and that's when you're doing comparison. Well, specifically, this kanji, this is in the verb niteru, which means to resemble. So it's that kind of comparison. So there will be sometimes kanji where the radical is present, but it doesn't seem to contribute to the meaning of the kanji. And that's what, the Japanese consider a radical that contributes to the meaning is the only radical that matters to them. But for us, is there a radical present? So if it is just present in general, it can be there. It might not contribute to the meaning, which is what's happening here. Okay, so the person radical, either you see person like this, or you see this like katakana I shape on the left side, most commonly. Next is te. Te is hand, and it has this simplified form, which is like this. And this appears a lot, again, on the left side. So when you throw something, there it is. When you clap, there it is. And then it's kind of present here in watching over. You can kind of see the shape. There's 1, 2, 3, right? It's here. Those lines are all present. So they're there. Which is to say, like, you can occasionally see kanji look a little distorted and not common forms. But these are like the most common forms you're going to see. Next is heart. Kokoro, right? Heart. So kokoro is 1, 2, 3, 4. I think it's like this. It has a simplified form then, which is just this, which appears on the left side, like that. And then it has this, which appears on the bottom of a kanji. So, you have like some stuff here, and then you would have that on the bottom, which you see here, this part on the bottom. And it generally then relates to matters of the heart or the soul. Kokoro is both the heart and the soul. So it's present in gender, it's present in lament, and it's present twice in regret. It's present both down here, but also to the left. This is koto, right? And koto as in kotoba, word. And this is to say something. So here it is in language, as I showed you before. And you'll notice that this is, right? Or sometimes you even see it like this. This contains a radical in it, which is mouth, but the whole thing is a radical. And so you'll see this in things that relate to saying things or words. So you have it in language, you have it in scribe, which is someone who writes things down when someone dictates things. It's present in slander, where you bring someone's reputation down with your words. And so you're going to usually see this when it relates to speech or words, right? He is both the sun and also day. So it looks like this. And here it is. It's present in old times at the bottom, as in, days gone by. It's present in drought, because the sun would cause water to not be there, so it's drought. And it's present in bright, because bright like the sun. Okay, and these are just example kanjis. I'm just showing you how the same kanji, the same radical rather, it shows up here on the bottom, but it shows up here on the top, and then here it shows up on the left. There are different places that they can occur, but they're the same shape, this shape, and that's the clue, sun or day. Next is ito, which is a thread. And you're not going to see this full shape that frequently. Okay, so the full shape is, I think it looks like this. You'll see the simplified shape a lot more. Like this. So here is the full shape, but kind of compressed on the left. And this is twisting like rope, how it's braided. You have it in bowstring in kind of like the simplified shape here, where this part is kind of like your bow and this is string. And then you have it in tie at the bottom. Okay, there's a question in chat. He as in sun is not the same as that as in Nihongo, is it? It is actually. So I never mentioned this, but let's go back here, right? So the name of Japan in Japanese is Nihon or Nippon. Both, I mean, it's a pronunciation choice. So it is Ni, as in the sun. And then it is Hon, not as book, but rather origin, right? It's a different word with the same kanji. So it is the origin of the sun. So land of the rising sun, you might have heard as like a nickname for Japan. That is what Nihon means. And so it is sun. That is what Nihon means. If you've seen before, by the way, a battery company or an electronics company called Nippon, right? Or you hear someone say, rather than saying Nihon, they say Nippon as well. That's the same thing. So this is Ni, right, for sun. And then this is Hon for origin. And this, we know H sounds with handakten can become P sounds. And we also know that sometimes you can add little tsukon as well. So you can end up with this, and that's how you get Nippon. Got it? So if you hear Nippon, it just means Nihon and it's the same. It's Japan. Okay. So this is ito. I'll show you again one more time. As in, like, the braiding of a rope, twisting a rope. It's present in bowstring here, and then it's also present in to tie something. Niku means flesh, right? So we said meat before when we learned niku as just a word, as in niku o taberu. It really means flesh, and it's just understood that, well, meat is animal flesh, right? So it shows up in two ways. It can either look like this, which is the full kanji, so like that, or it can show up in its simplified form, which is that. Okay, so here it is on the bottom of rotting, like decaying, flesh decays. Here it is in resemblance in its simplified form, right? Like this. And here it is in kidney. Okay. A lot of the words that relate to organs of the body or parts of the body will use this kanji. Most likely they will use the simplified version, but they might use the full version. That makes sense, right? Any part of the body probably has flesh, and so words relating to organs or muscles will use the flesh radical. And it makes sense that this would be a common radical because there are a lot of words that relate to the human body. I'll make a quick note. about Niku versus this kanji, Tsuki, which means the moon, right? So Tsuki as the moon is a very infrequent radical, okay? But it exists in 3 Joyo kanji. Even the 3 is kind of debated. So it's present here, it's present here, and then it's present here. It's the same shape. But this is the only 3, and even this one isn't really clear, cases where it means moon. Most of the time, except for when you write Tsuki itself, right, which means moon. So this kanji means moon when you write it on its own. And when you're talking about, like, sangatsu, right, this is March, it just means moon in this case. But when you see it as part of a kanji, as a radical, almost always it's niku. So it's relating to flesh. Okay? And it's like a simplification of this shape that ends up looking like the kanji for moon. And then they just kind of merged. So 99% of the time, you're going to see this shape in a kanji. It means it relates to meat or flesh, the human body, ultimately. Okay, here is tsuchi, which is the ground or the earth. So castle, there it is. Clod, as in, like, a bit of dirt, there it is. Solid, unmoving, stable like the earth, there it is. Okay, very common kanji. So you might see it either like this, or you might see it sometimes like this, with the bottom stroke upwards, as you're seeing it here. I'll make a difference between tsuchi and shi. So the difference is in the length of the strokes, right? If you look at tsuchi, bottom stroke is shorter. Top stroke is shorter, bottom stroke is longer. In shi, top stroke is longer, bottom stroke is shorter. Okay? This one is earth. This one is like warrior, samurai kind of thing. This one is less common than this one. Okay? Important not to mix these up, because not every word that relates to samurai relates to the earth. In Jisho, tsuchi, the earth, is the first one, and then shi is the second one. All right. Here's a kanji, a radical that does not, it's not a kanji on its own. It just shows up in a lot of kanji, and it means to go or a road. Sometimes it's considered like the walking radical. So it's present in retreat, right? There it is, as in go back. It's present in escape or run. It has that. To pass through something. There it is again. So kind of looks like that. Sometimes you get multiple. Sometimes you get that kind of shape, and then you can even get 1, 2, this kind of a shape as well. They're all different. It's going to depend on the kanji, but I think this is the most common form you're seeing it in. Okay, here's one that relates to grass or plant, right? This is basically kusa. So 1, 2, 3, and this generally will show up on the top of a kanji. So your kanji is here, and it's on the top, like in potato, or in flower, or in sapling. And then there's a case where it looks like this, right? Something like that, but not very common. This is the most common form. So this is going to be when you see words that relate to plants. This one is a roof or a crown. It derives from the katakana u, right? So 1, 2, 3, like this. And it's on the top of stuff. So it's present in character or letter. It's kind of present in sky here at the top. And it's present in best regards. Kai is wealth or value. Okay, so this used to be shellfish, or clams, right? That's what the origin was. And that's because they used to use shells for currency before they started using coins. So it's present in buying, it's present in property, it's present in trade. Onna is woman, and this is present in a lot of kanji. It's present in tsuki here. This one is a woman, and then this one is child. So this is often taught as a woman is fond of her child. It's present in marriage right here. It's present in princess right there. Okay, and so on. So this one is 1, 2, 3, like that. I'll make a quick note about this radical. It's present in 2 different words. It can appear either on the left or on the right. Here it is on the right, and here it is on the left. You can treat them as 2 different radicals if you want, because they're both simplifications ultimately of different kanji, right? This is village, which used to, I guess, look like this. I'm just drawing the shape, not the actual kanji. And then the hill look like that. And then they both kind of simplified ultimately to looking like this. But one is on the left and one is on the right. You can say that they're 2 different things, or you can say they're the same thing. We're going to say they're 2 different things because Jisho splits them. Okay, so the one that's on the right is more common, and it means village. So it's present in capital city. It's present in department because, initially governments were broken down village by village. Present in hometown, right? So this relates to a town or a village. The one that means hill, it's present in the word for slope. To obstruct, being in the way like a hill. Or to hide, like, a mountain hides the sun as it sets. Here's kane. Kane means gold, and we're going to see it most of the time in words that refer to metals. Okay, so kane is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like this. Complicated. It sometimes is squashed as it appears to the left, like in silver or in record. But if you look in iron pot, you can kind of see the whole thing present there. All right. Ichi is 1, and it usually shows up in words that mean 1 or as a horizontal line. So it's present in 3 because it is 1 plus 2, right? So ichi, ni, that makes sun. So that's where 3 comes from. It shows up in above because this is your plane and this is above it. It shows up in below because this is your plane and this is below it. It shows up in world here. It just is there. It doesn't really contribute to the meaning there, and so on. I guess you could say that the world, initially they thought of it as like a flat plane before, understanding that the earth is round. So maybe it comes from there. Here's one. This means sword. Okay, and it has a couple of different ways that it shows up. So it can look like this, right? It also can look like this. So to cut something, you get this form. To separate something, you get this form. And then to return something, it's kind of present here. All right. So these are the same radical, but because they look so different, Jisho will separate between these 2 as if they are 2 different radicals. This one appears on the right most of the time, but they are the same radical. They both mean sword. So they relate to swords or weapons and then cutting things. All right, this is Ju. Ju is 10. So generally, it's a plus right across, but sometimes it can look like this in certain fonts, although I haven't really seen that. So it means 10. sometimes, but it often means complete as well, as in that's all of them. So it's present in cooperation because it's 10 hands coming together, kind of a thing. It's present in 1,000 there, and it's present in half as well. This shape appears in a lot of other radicals, and so the thing you want to do when you're searching for a kanji in Jusho is if you can identify a bigger radical, right? Like this one is life, or this one is blue. If you see one of these radicals, don't pick the smaller shape, pick the biggest component that you can completely identify. It's the same thing with like Nihongo, right? If you see this radical, this one appears in the 7 strokes, and you see this radical, this one appears in 3, pick this over this because you're still going to need to get this part in your search otherwise. So it's going to be a lot faster to narrow down using the biggest piece. All right, ta is rice field. If you've ever seen a rice field, they kind of have these like, this is how you write it, by the way. They're kind of neatly laid out like these. You'd have rows of plants kind of like all over like this, and then channels of water that go in between them. So it looks very laid out if you've ever seen a rice field. So they simplified that, and it means a field. So it's present in town because a town is sustained by rice. You grow the food, the farms, and then people settle around the farms. Present in picture, present in man. Don't ask me why, it just is. This is heat, and this is fire. Okay, so kind of looks like that. Actually, the last one's probably up like that. Like that, sure. Okay, fire often shows up on the bottom of kanji as like 4 marks. So it's present in lamp, okay, but then here in boiling or in point, it shows up on the bottom as like these 4 lines, which you can think of, this is like fire, right? So if you had a pot with some water underneath it, this is the fire heating it up. This is big. O is big. 1, 2, 3, like this. So it's present in thick. It's present here in stir up like this. And it's present in deep inside like this as well. So this kanji oku means deep inside. So you're going like inside, deep inside, big inside. Yama is mountain. Okay, so let me see. I think it's like this. So present in island here at the bottom, present in beach on the top, present in branch off on the left. Sometimes it makes sense, islands, beaches. You can kind of see why mountain shows up there, especially, you know, given the terrain of Japan or China, where these symbols were invented. But then in some words, like in branch off, doesn't make sense. Shoku is food or eat. So we've seen this on its own with taberu to mean to eat. Sometimes this gets squashed and is placed to the left. So this is present in this kanji, which is to swallow or to drink. It's present in mochi, which is a food item. And then it's just present in this one, which means building. Kuruma is cart or vehicle. So way back in the day, you can imagine like horse carts or bullock carts or something like that. You know, some kind of a carriage with a wheel that is used to transport stuff. Eventually, this just came to mean car, because nowadays we just have cars that transport things everywhere. But a lot of words that relate then to transportation come from this kuruma. So here's the word for transport. Here's the word for rickshaw, which is a human-drawn cart. And then army, because it matters in the logistics. This one means to step or to go. right? If you remember this kanji, the other way, it's kind of like iku, right? I think it looks like this, whatever. And it means to step or to go. So it's present in journey, right? This is life, this is a step. So a journey is a step into your life. It's present in duty, it's present in he as well. It just is. Okay, yeah, so here's iku. Like that, right? It contains this shape, but actually this is a radical. So we're not going to say that this is a radical in iku. We're just going to say that the whole shape is a radical, and it will mean to go. This is me, which is eyes, right? So it's like he, but you draw 1, 2, 3 instead. So this can appear as is, or it can appear horizontally as well, like that. So it's present in prefecture, it's present in clear, it's present in dream. Okay. Rain is ame. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Like this. Sometimes gets simplified. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Like that. So ame is rain. It's present in yuki, which is snow. It's present in tenki, which is electricity, because it comes from lightning originally. It's present in kuma, which is cloud, which again makes sense. Rain comes from clouds. Inu is dog, but its radical, this radical, is present for animal. It just stands in for animal. So this is like this. So it's present in neko. It's just present as animal here. This form is present. And then hunting, you get this one again. Tama, it's a round thing. Okay, so tama on its own means ball, usually. But really, it's something that's round to represent gems or kings. So when you see it as a radical, it means a jewel or a king. So it's present here in ring, it's present on the bottom at emperor, and it's present here in logic. So technically speaking, right, this is the radical, and this is a simplification. This is not actually a radical, if you look at it. It's just a variant of this one from a Japanese dictionary perspective. And so even though the kanji might be written like this, when you search for it, you need to use this radical. Okay? Except in Jisho, where this is the only way you can search. So this is if you were searching with an actual dictionary, a Japanese dictionary. But in Jisho, we only have this, so we don't care. Next is ishi, which is stone. Okay, so it's present in to polish, right? Because you typically have like a whetstone that you use, polish against. It's present here at the bottom of Go, the board game Go, which is about placing differently colored squares made from stones. And it's present in envy. It just women and then stone. Don't ask me why. Chikara means strength. So present in labor. It's present in move, present in recruit, like to an army, right? So chikara is strength or power. If you remember, man was rice field plus labor. So a man is the labor of the rice field. Does ishi contain the kuchi radical? So that's what I was saying, right? Even before with iku. Not if it is a radical, it can contain what looks like a radical. But if I'm telling you that it is a radical, then we're going to consider this full thing as a radical. And we're not going to say that, oh, this contains mouth, so it relates to mouth in some way. Does that make sense? So I know I said, for example, that, this radical contained mouth, and so it relates to a mouth thing. Yes, but I shouldn't have said that because the full radical itself relates to speech. All right, we have koromo, which is clothes. Cloth, really. So you'll see it here. But you see the simplified form, which is like katakana ne, like that. So it's here in bag, it's here in first, and here in coat. In fact, if you look at coat, it is cloth and then to wrap around. So something you wrap around yourself that's made of cloth, it's a coat. All right, we have prayer. This is shi. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This katakana ne is the more common way you'll see it. So it's present in kami, in God, right there. The full form is present in ritual, and then it's present in company. So this, right, is very similar to this, and this especially is very similar to katakana ne. How do you not confuse them? Well, katakana ne is not going to show up alone. It's going to show up in a full word, like netto, right? So in that case, we're like, oh, okay, read this as ne. That's fine. So I have an example sentence here that uses all three of these kanji, like the radicals and the katakana ne. Netto de hatsu haishin yoroshiku ryou ni to kami-sama ni nozonda. So netto is internet. Hatsu haishin is first live stream, basically your debut stream, if you imagine. Yoroshiku yo ni. So yoroshiku is happiness-ly. Yoni in the form of happiness-ly. And this is a way that saying yoni is a way to make requests. So you ask God that your first internet live stream will go well. To kami-sama ni nozonda. Nozomu is to ask, to wish for. So here you have this symbol, right, which is this radical. Here, the first one, you have this radical, and here you have katakana ne. And you can see then, right, that it's hard to mix them up because they'll be present as either parts of a larger kanji, if it's the radical, or as a word that's fully written in katakana, so it'll be ne. All right, this is yumi, which means bow. It's present in younger brother at the bottom, present in to pull, and it's present in strong. Take is like this, but typically just this top part appears on the top. So it's present in hashi, chopsticks. It's present in pipe and in answer on the top. I have mata, which is again, like that. So it's in friend, it's in to take, it's in to receive. You have to strike something. So normally looks like this, but there's a simplified version which is that. And so this one is pretty common. So again, this is friend. I copy pasted wrong. So don't worry about this. And then there's winter, right? Winter looks like that. So here it is in fuyu, here it is in natsu, and here it is in to change, like the seasons. So you're seeing a lot of similar radicals, right? So you have this, 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 this. They all look different. And this is where stroke order can matter, right? The way that you draw your kanji, this versus this, right? Versus that. The way you do the stroke order is going to affect how the shape looks when you draw it. But also the differences are a little clearer in certain fonts versus others. Like you can really see how this is different from this in this font. Like this one is 1, 2, 3, and this one is 1, 2, 3, like that. So this stroke comes first here, but in this it cuts through at the end, and so on. All right, this one is sake, so alcohol, or it is the rooster zodiac. They're unrelated. They just happen to use the same kanji. It's kind of like that. So it's present in sake, water plus this. It's present in acid, and then it's present in drunk. This is grain, like a grain of rice or a grain of wheat. Like that. It's in excellent. It's in second, as in the time, 1 second. It's present in melancholy here, along with heart. This is a radical only, not a kanji. That means building, right? So, like that. So here it is in warehouse, here it is in shop, and here it is in sit. This one means sickness. It's kind of like the building one, like that. So it's in illness, it's in healing, it's in smallpox. You'll see this in like disease names typically. This one means corpse, like a dead body. So it's present in none, present in roof, present in tail. You have sun, which is an inch or to measure. So it's in military officer, it's down here in exalted, and it's down here in temple. Okay, so let's look once again at the 49 radicals. So these 6 are in 25% of Joyo kanji, right? Mouth, water, tree, person, hand, heart. Then there are 18 more that are in 15%. So you have the 6 plus the 12 more. So words or speech, day, thread, meat, earth, walk, plant, wealth, woman, building, hill, or sorry, village, hill, and metal. And then all 49 to make 75%, right? So then you had 1 to cut, 10 rice field, fire, and so on, right? Just keep going. We went through all of these. So you have these you have these radicals, right? And if you have, let's say, a really complicated kanji, like I've been using go because this is one that I think we've seen enough times that we're familiar with this, right? Go contains this part, which is a clue to its reading. The complicated kanji have clues for the onyomi reading. So this is something that when Hanzi was invented, right, the Chinese writing system, they put clues into how do you say a complicated kanji with a smaller radical that contains the sound. And so you can see that and you'll be, oh, okay, this sounds like this. So it's only going to give us clues to the onyomi because this is a Chinese concept. The kunyomi, we're not going to get clues like that. Okay. So if, for example, you look at all these kanji, which contain some variation of this, right? So it's here, 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 down here, and these. They all are read as se, which means life. Okay. So this is important to us for people who are typing Japanese using IME. We care about what a kanji sounds like because we have to type it in phonetically. We're not writing the kanji by shape. Okay, and so now, while not all kanji have these kinds of things, and there will be exceptions as well, where you have a radical that looks like, oh, there's a clue to the onyomi, but it's actually not helping you like that. You can learn these groups of kanji that contain a single radical that are clues to the onyomi. And so when you see a new kanji, you can guess the reading saying, well, it contains this radical, so it probably sounds like this. So all these kanji will have the sho sound. Okay. So these are the base kanji that will have like a sho sound, and then when you see them in other kanji, those are still said as sho. Same thing with the ka sound, right? So this is ka. So in hana, one of the onyomi readings is ka, and so on. So that same shape kind of present here, it's present here. All of these become ka, and so on. So if you want to learn these like sound sisters, you can go to this link here, and you can download a flashcard deck for Anki that has the 90 to 100 of the most common ones. So depending on what kind of person you are, you can learn these 90 really quickly, right? You learned hiragana and katakana, that was about 40 something characters each. So you could maybe learn 90 kanji in, say, a week or so. Or maybe it takes you longer because they're more complicated. And it's hard to learn kanji in the abstract for me. So if you find it difficult to just memorize a list of kanji with no real meaning, that's fine. Okay? The idea is, if this method works for you to use the sound sisters and recognize the radical in a kanji and be able to then guess the reading, then you can look at this deck and learn the sound sisters. Then what you'll be able to do is, as you're learning vocabulary, you can identify these radicals, and so you can guess the reading of a word even if you've never seen it before. And that makes it even easier to search on Jisho, because you can now type the word using IME. If this doesn't work for you, there's still the searching by radical shape that we just talked about up till now by looking at different radicals. Okay. I'm going to recommend this browser extension. This is not the only one that works like this, but this is the one I have installed. It's called Yomi-chan. Okay. So you can install this as a browser extension, and when you see Japanese text in your browser, as long as it can be selected, you just hold Shift and hover over the word, and it will show you information like this, like a little card with information about how you write it, how you read it, sometimes even pitch accent words that contain it, and so on. So this is kind of like embedding Jisho into your browser so that you don't have to copy paste each of these words into Jisho and come back. Especially helpful if you're going to start reading articles or books, you know, some kind of like print medium where all the text is Japanese. Also useful, let's say, if you're just browsing on YouTube, right, and you see a stream title from someone and it's in Japanese, and you recognize some of the words but not all. You can highlight the words that you don't know, and Yomi-chan will tell you what they are, and that makes it easy for you. So you can simultaneously acquire words in context really quickly without having to go back and forth or copy paste. Okay? And then, because this speeds up how quickly you can read something, you can just take the context of the whole sentence and use that to learn the word. And so now you're going to learn words really quickly. So in my opinion, the best way to learn kanji is to simultaneously learn it with vocabulary. So as you learn words, you learn its associated kanji, and you'll notice patterns. You'll see like, okay, this kanji makes sense to me, or well, these words make sense to me because they contain this kanji, and I know what those two mean because I learned words before that use one or the other or both. Okay, so I'll leave it open for questions now. Thank you so much for sticking with me for 9 lessons. Hopefully, even though this was really sped up relative to the pace I tend to go, you were able to learn a lot. Even if you don't retain all of this, you can come back to these videos and go over parts that you didn't understand if you ever need to. There are tons of other resources I'm going to recommend for you if you want to continue learning Japanese. For grammar, I'm going to suggest Take Him has a blog and a PDF version of his guide to grammar, and this is written from the perspective of how Japanese students learn Japanese grammar. So it's usually used by people learning Japanese as a self-study resource because it most closely mimics actual Japanese language learning in Japan. So a lot of people like this. There's a YouTube channel called Cure Dolly, which is where I get the language model that I use when I do things like song breakdowns and so on. When I'm showing you the structure of the Japanese language, most of that content is basically coming straight from Cure Dolly. She doesn't make videos anymore. I think she passed away. But it's a really, really good channel. Tons and tons of like light bulb moments in every single one of her videos. So I highly recommend that for grammar stuff. There are YouTubers that focus on speaking Japanese, either native Japanese speakers or others. I'm going to recommend Dogen because he makes funny shorts, but occasionally he makes videos about pitch accent, which is something you don't really need to worry about, but more often linguistics and like the structure of Japanese from a linguistic perspective and why certain sounds morph the way they do. And that can help you sound more Japanese, but it also improves your listening. Knowing that ikka means ikuka, and it's just the u is devoiced, means that when you're listening to someone say that, you're not going to hear ikka, you're going to hear ikuka, and that's shall we go, ikuka, and so on. But also he uses his Japanese in shorts. He shows you a lot of funny jokes about being a foreigner in Japan, so you can pick up some of the culture side as well. And then for listening practice as well, I'm going to just shout out HoloLive is great for me. Just listening to normal Japanese people, even if they're playing characters, just hearing how a Japanese person talks, right? Very, very useful. It's unfiltered and raw in that case. So it's not like been carefully scripted. It's just they read things and they say things. You can also read the comments as fast as you can, right? If you catch something, to figure out both how people talk on the internet, which is a very different way from how people might talk in person, but then also just what raw, unfiltered conversation looks like, because most resources, people are going to script their stuff. All right. And then finally, for reading, right, once you've installed Yomi-chan, I strongly recommend that you start reading something that you like. If you can, start with like children's books, because at least their difficulty level will match what you know. But if you're like, no, I don't want to deal with children's books, I'm really interested in reading ReZero, for example. It's a light novel. It's fairly complicated Japanese-wise in terms of how tough the language is. But if that's what motivates you, if that's going to keep you using Japanese, then go with ReZero, okay? You can watch anime to learn Japanese. I think in the beginning stage, it's still fine to have English subtitles and Japanese audio playing so that you just listen for stuff that you remember from these classes, the particles, maybe some of the verbs, some of the words that you know, like that are not verbs, adjectives, nouns, and so on. Listen to the structure, listen to the intonation, how conversation flows. Eventually, I would say switch to Japanese subtitles, even if you can't read the subtitles perfectly. That's fine. It shows you words. You'll hear a word. Maybe you heard the word before and you know what it means, but you don't know the kanji. Now you see it in the kanji in the subtitles. That's useful. But also, there's this disconnect that happens when you read the English and you hear the Japanese. And so putting the Japanese subtitles means that you don't shortcut any learning. You are forced to listen carefully and actually understand what they're saying. And then it also helps with your reading simultaneously. So if you're going to learn using anime, you can do that. Some anime, it's going to be hard to find Japanese subs. So there is a website that I can send you a link for, where you can download the subs of a Japanese anime. And then if you use, say, VLC player or something like that, you can load in those subs instead of the English. Okay. So all of this is if you want to continue learning on your own. So you're welcome to do that. You can listen to Japanese songs and sing along with them as a way to practice speaking Japanese, even though it's not going to be how people actually speak Japanese. It makes you make the sounds and it helps you learn vocabulary as well, right? If you take a Japanese song you really like and you learn the words, now that you know a little bit of Japanese, you can translate all the words, you know some of the language structures, so you can translate that. And now in your head, you understand at least what that song means. It's not just sounds to you anymore. And that can deepen how much you like the song as well, and so on. So, a lot of stuff for you to check out on your own if you want. You can always ask me questions if you have any. If there are songs that you want me to break down, let me know. And I tend to do these. I go through songs and I'll, translate it word by word using the Kurori language model to really understand what a song means in Japanese rather than in English, rather than reading a translation. We learn what the song means in Japanese so that we fully understand it when we just hear it. Okay? So you can reach out to me if you want any of those. And thank you for sticking with me this whole time. Congratulations. You've learned a lot of Japanese. I would say you've done roughly 6 to 7 months worth of studying material that I covered in 2 weeks. So, fantastic job if you were able to keep up with all of that. So I will see you again some other time. Maybe, I don't know what kinds of videos I'm going to upload going forward, but hopefully, if I do, I'll let you know about them. So thanks for sticking with me. Go check out all the other resources on the internet that are not me. Maybe they explain something better than I have. And